So I'm back. Hello. Oh, fluff, fluff, fluff. Maybe this is better. Hannah's going to test the sound for me. If it'll load, things are going a bit slow. Oh my goodness. If it'll load, things are going a bit slow. Oh my goodness. I think so. Alrighty. Okay. Maureen. Thank you, Maureen. Yes, thank you, thank you. Okay. Let's wait for everyone to catch up. See how we're going. Leonie's here. Hello, Leonie. Sometimes I think something is against me trying to talk to you guys about this. This is really important stuff that everyone needs to know. So, okay. Hello, Jade. Hello, Kerry. Julian Rod, Linky family, Lynette. Everyone's popped over. Thank goodness. So I'll just run through my beginning spiel again. You keep coming up, and then when everyone's here, we'll get started. So if you're joining us tonight, it's Tuesday, the 1st of September 2020. I'm in my kitchen in Melbourne, happily waiting till lockdown lifts in a couple of weeks, hopefully, and we can go out again. Yeah, I think it has got it out for all of us. Hello, Melinda. Hello, Trish. Okay, Julie. Everyone's making it back. Now, I just need to. Oh, goodness. Did I lose my... Nope. I was going to say, did I lose my notes? But I didn't, because the last couple of weeks, folks, I've really concentrated on building pantries. Not just building a little pantry, but building a long-term food storage pantry. Not because I want to scare you. That's not my intention at all. Now, I've had some feedback that, it's fear-mongering and it's wrong and it's causing panic. Well, if that's what I'm doing, you're taking the message the wrong way. Because whether there's a food shortage or a fire or a flood or a drought or a strike on the wharves or whatever, if you don't have enough food, toiletries, cleaning supplies to see you till that ends, you are going to be up the creek without a paddle. It is your responsibility as a human being to take care of yourself. If you are a wife, a mother, then you need to take care of your family. If you are a daughter with elderly parents, it is your responsibility to make sure that they are cared for. And don't give me this, no, it's not. Yes, it is. If you bring children into the world, it's your responsibility to care for them, even when they're adults. And I'm not saying mollycoddle them and spoon feed them and baby them, but you have a responsibility to make sure that they have food to eat, a safe place to sleep. That is your responsibility. And the same thing with our parents or elderly family members. And that's not just, I tried to tell my children that we took care of grandma when she was old and needed us, because when I was little and needed her, she took care of me. What goes around comes around. And hopefully by watching Wayne and I take care of our older family members, and by them helping us, our children, when we're old and need to be spoon-fed or whatever, they will do that for us. They will know that that's what you do. You do it out of love. You do it out of compassion. You do it out of respect, but you still need to do it. But you can't do that if you can't take care of yourself. So I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to cause panic. I'm certainly not encouraging anyone to go out and panic buy. That is not what this is about. I want you all to just understand that there is definitely going to be a food shortage. That's a given, folks. It's going to happen. So you can be wise enough to get a bit ahead so that when it does hit, you're not as impacted and you have the ability to care for yourself and your family, and you'll be better off than the other people that live in la la land and don't take any notice of this. So I'm not trying to scare you. Now I've got that off my chest. Last week, the first week we were talking about being prepared for a food shortage. Last week I was talking about the non-food pantries that we have. Now that's all for your personal use. That's what you build to look after your family, you and your family. You have the food that you will need to eat for however long you decide, and it's up to you to choose how long you want to build your pantry for to last. I have it 12 months. Some things I'm starting to stretch out a little bit longer, but pretty much 12 months. I figure, if the shell grit, becomes airborne, then 12 months gives us a good breathing space to be able to take a breath, step back, take stock of what's going on, and plan how we're going to move forward. But you might only want a month or 3 months or whatever. Understand, I didn't just go and, suddenly go out and buy 12 months worth of everything. It's taken me a long time to build my pantry. But those pantries are for personal use. This week, I want to talk to you about building a trading pantry or a bartering pantry or a swapping pantry. I've been reading some different, I shouldn't read so much because it just sends my mind into a frenzy, but reading up about different currencies and how they're stable or not quite so stable, what they're going to do, whether Bitcoin's going to become more popular and, cash is on the way out. So we'll all be switching to some sort of virtual currency. Maybe. I don't think cash will ever totally disappear. It's not in my lifetime anyway. But there's a chance that for the most part, and we are seeing it in Australia since February, we're seeing, cash is being used less and less, and EFTPOS credit, online transactions are being used more and more. So they are virtual transactions. It's a virtual currency pretty much. So if you don't have cash for whatever reason, because, our economy's tanked and cash is worthless, or because you've lost your job and you need what money you have to pay the bills, what do you have to trade with? What do you have around your home that you can trade with? What can you get your hands on now to build a trading or a bartering or a swapping pantry? There's lots of things that, if you think back to Second World War, that's about as far back as we'll go, or the Depression, but Second World War is pretty good. What was scarce? Now, I can remember my father's mother saying that Australia actually did quite well out of the war, but if you were in the UK or Europe, you really suffered because there was nothing. They really, really suffered. So something like, a packet of tea was gold. Soap, just plain old soap, bath soap, was gold. If you had chickens and eggs, fresh eggs, They were gold. They were currency. You could swap them for things that you needed. So you might have needed buttons because buttons were scarce. Fabric was scarce. Elastic was scarce. Hang on a minute. All those things have been scarce here in the last few months. Eggs were in short supply. Buttons and elastic and fabric, really hard to get. Those things have all been in short supply here in Australia in 2020. If you have a stash of them, and I'm not saying go and, fill the garden shed with them, but if you have a stash of them, especially if you are a sewer or a knitter or a crocheter, is that a word? Or seeds if you're a gardener, those things won't be wasted. You'll be able to use them, but they're also currency. You can swap them for things that you need. So if you have elastic and your neighbour has firelighters, you can do a trade. You can swap for what you need. It might be you've got elastic and your neighbour has preserving jars, which are in short supply still all over the world. You can do a trade and swap. So you don't need cash to be able to get the things that you want. You can, things like sugar, a couple of extra packets of sugar. Sugar is gold. It goes very quickly. If you're looking at food supplies, foods to swap, sugar, flour, tea, coffee, chocolate. Chocolate. Good old block of Cadbury's, dairy milk, worth a fortune. Absolutely currency. You can use it for currency. So as you're building your using pantry that you're going to use for your personal use, think about the things that you might be able to add to it that you will use, because you don't want to add them if you're not going to use them. That's just wasteful. But that might also be handy if you need to do a barter or a trade or a swap. Think about those things. Candles came up last week. I think we were talking about candles. Candles. Herbs and spices. If you have a herb garden in your backyard, you can grow parsley, garlic, mint, rosemary, sage, oregano. It's currency. You can have enough for you, but you can also use some as bartering, for tools to barter and trade to get what you need. And all of those things are pretty normal. Most of us have those things. Some other things that are perhaps a bit out there, not really too extreme, but woolen blankets, sheets, clothes, children's clothes and shoes. Now, I don't know, I swapped and traded, and all my kids with other families that had children the same age or around the same ages, and we'd swap clothes and shoes occasionally and, toys even, and we'd just swap them amongst ourselves. But if push came to shove, that's currency. It's worth something. Those things are valuable and they can get you what you need. Now, another thing I've been reading was, where did I put it? I lost it. Oh, down here. I've been reading this last week especially, and a lot of what I'm talking about goes back to our show 2 weeks ago with the food shortages. One of the statements I read, and I'll read it, I've got it here in front of me, word for word. We are risking a famine of biblical proportions. All the data we have, including WFP, which is World Food, whatever, I'll look up in a minute, forecast that the number of people experiencing malnutrition will grow by 80% by the end of this year. That comes from David Beasley. Now, he's the executive director of the World Food Program, which is a United Nations thing. Don't get me started on the UN, but you know, whether it's the rice crops failing in Australia, the corn failing in the US, not the corn, says Hannah, corn failing in the US, the wheat failing in Canada, and they're Western countries, they're Westernized countries that are supposedly, leaders in the modern world, and their crops are failing. 80%, they expect the number of people experiencing malnutrition to grow by 80% by the end of this year. That's enormous. That's enormous. That puts it up to around, oh my goodness, 82, about 600 million people starving, suffering from malnutrition. We don't need to do that. We need to be prepared, people. Don't be a prepper, be a preparer. And I mean that. To me, a prepper is someone that goes to extremes and has big buckets of vacuum-sealed grains and wheat berries and things, and a big food mill to grind their own. And it's going to, they're in 10-gallon buckets and they're all stacked high and it will last for 40 years. I don't want to be like that, because to me, that's not useful stuff. I know that it might last a long time, and if push came to shove, you could use it. But I'd rather prepare and have the things that we need and use in the pantry, so that, I don't have to figure out what to do with, 5 tons of wheat berries.
What wheat berries?
They're little grains of wheat. See, Hannah didn't even know what wheat berries are. I'm not a prepper. I'm not saying, and I'm not telling anyone to run out and get ammunition and guns and weapons and things. I'm not saying put bars on your windows. I do think an electric fence around our house would suit me fine, but that's another story.
It's illegal.
Yeah, it's also illegal, rats. But I want to be prepared, but I don't want to go to extremes. And I'm not telling anyone to do that. Just think ahead about what you need, what you will use. If you suddenly couldn't use cash, you might have cash, but your banks could shut and you may not be able to get it out. What would you do? I mean, you could have $100,000 sitting in the bank, but if you can't get to it, it's not going to do you any good. You need to be able to use the skills that you have, use the materials that you have, use the ingredients that you have, the items you have to keep yourself going. I think that a lot of us are preparing. We're building our pantries, we're adding to them every week as best we can. We're broadening the scope of what we add to our pantries to include things like medicines and toiletries and sewing aids and things like that. But I also think there's an awful lot of people that are still really naive, or who are terrified, don't want to take responsibility for themselves, so that, as I said, when the shell grit becomes airborne, they are going to turn around and want someone else to fix it for them. I don't want to be like that, because I don't think that it's going to be that easy. Right now, we've got JobKeeper and JobSeeker running. But if things went really pear-shaped, JobKeeper and JobSeeker would run out. Our unemployment benefits, as we know them in Australia at the moment, would stop because the money wouldn't be there. Our country wouldn't be able to borrow any more money because nobody else would have it. The money wouldn't be there. And with people out of work, there's no taxes being paid. So there's no tax income coming in to cover the social security benefits that have to go out. It's a vicious cycle, folks. We need to be self-sufficient, stand on our own 2 feet, be prepared to look after ourselves in all things. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I'm catching up on my notes. Like I said, a disaster, if they're saying a famine of biblical proportions, well, there's already locusts going all through South America and all through Brazil. The crops are being wiped out by locusts. If you remember back to the Bible, that was one of the plagues. Locusts is what we need. But a disaster like that doesn't just mean starvation. It puts thousands and thousands of people out of work. And like I said, no work means no money. You can't rely on the government to help you because they won't have the money to do it. It won't be there. If no one's working, no one's earning, no one's paying tax, the money isn't there, guys. So we need to be self-sufficient. Now, one of the other ways that you can, or something else you can use as currency is your skill. For example, Hannah's a hairdresser. So she can trade haircuts and colours and perms or whatever she's got, sets and blow waves or, whatever, for what she needs. And it doesn't have to be like for like. She could trade her, the value of a haircut for vegetables from someone's garden, whatever she needs. If you're a knitter or a sewer or a crocheter, you can knit jumpers and sell them, barter them, trade them. Make clothes and trade them, or quilts and trade them, furnishings and trade them. Because even though things are tough, or things will be tough, people still like nice stuff. We still like pretty things. We still want our homes to be comfortable. We still want to have the nice stuff. We can't do it for ourselves. We look for someone else to do it. And you can build up quite a nice little bartering. You might do jams, make beautiful jams, and you could swap some jam for a new dress or a new pair of pants or some mending. And I know that there are people that do that now. I know I have a friend that swaps her jams for gardening. She's got a neighbour who loves gardening. She hates it. But the neighbour comes and does the gardening. She pays her in jam. She gets the jars back. It's always nice. Folks, if someone gives you homemade jam, please always ask them if they want the jar back. And if they say yes, make sure you give it back. Jars are in short supply. They're really hard to get, believe it or not. They're really hard to get. So it's also encouraging that if you give the jar back, I know someone else who says if they give the jar back, they've got a better chance of getting another jar of jam. So that works too. But she swaps gardening for jam. Now, jam's expensive. If you buy a nice jam, you're paying $7, $8, $10 for just a tiny jar. So don't think that swapping jam for gardening services is uneven. No, it's not. That's the other thing you need to do. Make sure you're realistic. I think we covered this a few weeks ago too. Make sure you're realistic in your value, the value of your service or what you're trading. Make sure it's a realistic and honest value. Don't overinflate it and try and rip someone off. That's just wrong. You wouldn't like it if someone did it to you, so don't do it to them, because remember, what goes around comes around. Now, did I mention car parts and tools before when I was saying unusual things to think about keeping? Hannah said alcohol.
The vodka for vanilla essence.
Yeah, vodka for
Vanilla beans.
Vanilla beans. Vanilla beans are very expensive. If you've got vanilla beans,
Yeah.
yeah, they're worth a fortune. You can trade them. All those sorts of things. But car parts and tools, garden tools, hand tools can become valuable currency if you don't have cash. Now, a while ago, I'm not sure if it still works, there used to be a scheme for trading that sort of thing. If you had, different tools and things, someone else would swap them with something else, and it worked quite well. Sorry, okay. Alrighty, now. Joyce says she's well known for swapping jam for jars. Learning to sharpen and refresh your gardening tools is a valuable asset. Yes, it is.